I'm back timing here, honey. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we will get started. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Hannah Holt. I am a 2014 and 2016 alumna here of Kansas Wesleyan University. Very proud Coyote, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are. Raise your hand if you did graduate from here already. Fabulous, lots of alums in the house today. And I know that some of you guys are here, not an alum, but a member of our community, and we're very glad to have you along for the ride today as well. How many of you guys are current students right now? Okay, how many of you guys are familiar with TikTok or Instagram Reels? Most of you, I assume, right? Okay, good. Okay, so if you guys are like me and have your attention span significantly shortened, great news, everybody. This is going to be the ride of your life. This is my favorite way to receive information because we now have 6 speakers ahead of you who are going to be just discussing things in 6 different subjects, and they only have 7 minutes to make those things happen, okay? So if you don't like what you're hearing, guess what? In 7 minutes, it's over, and we move on to the next one. Sound good? Just kidding. They all have incredible information to be delivering to you from our Kansas Wesleyan community here. These are some of the best academic professors that we have on campus, and then some others that we found off the street, so it worked out really well. Speaking of which, Bernie Watson. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Botson is a was a Marine CH-53 helicopter crew chief for 8 years, spending the rest of his 33 years and 26 days in the military in the U.S. Air Force. He worked for Saline County Emergency Management, and we were lucky enough to snag him here to come work at Kansas Wesleyan University. He is helping as a liaison for the U.S. Marine Officer Candidate School Program here at KWU and the U.S. Air Force ROTC Corps. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bernie Botson.
How's everybody doing today? Yeah. All right, after lunch, wake you up. Here we go, strap in, hold on. We only have 7 minutes. What I'm going to talk about is leveraging technology for campus safety and security, in particular, active shooter. Okay, Justin, raise your hand. Everybody look in the back corner there. He's my co-defendant with this operation. What we're looking at right now is special camera systems that can detect trouble before it happens or as it's happening. So at lunch, I wanted to know how good the current system that we're auditing they gave, and how many did they give us, Justin? 10 cameras on campus are the new evolution ones. So I had my chief of security, because I'm the director of campus safety and security, take my picture, okay? He uploaded it to the system, and he goes, which building do you want to know where you were at? And I said, Pioneer Hall. And for the last 2 weeks or so, instantaneously, every time I walked in that building, there I was, okay? So what's that mean? That means if somebody gets trespassed from here, I can upload their picture, and if somebody comes back, it automatically tells my security officers and myself and Justin, okay? Gunshot detection. The newer cameras can actually hear a gunshot and know the frequency of the round. Some of them also have a flash detector, meaning if there's a muzzle flash, that confirms the active shooter. So what'll happen is if you have more than one of these cameras, say in the basement of the science building, it will triangulate the location, and instantaneously myself, Sam, our chief of security, and Dave Lanning, who was my first field training officer with the Saline County Sheriff's Office, ironically, we're all armed, and we will respond to the exact location where the shot came from. Because if we're in the science building and something bad happens in the art building, we're not going to hear it, okay? Another leverage that we're using is a program called Safe Zone. So basically, every student has access to this program. Any military folks in here? Anybody ever hear of a Blue Force tracker? Okay, it's basically where the good guys can see the good guys to prevent fratricide or friendly fire. So right now, I'm the dot right there, and our security chief is up at Maybe Arena right now. So we can deconflict our response because I know exactly where Dave is and we're exactly where Sam is. So if we're coming, that we don't get into any kind of crossfire situation or any of that kind of stuff. We've also upgraded our physical security, and that now, because of all the active shooters that are going on in the nation, we are bringing pistols to rifle fights, okay? Because most of the people have an AK-47, an SKS, or some kind of AR platform. So our new vests can actually stop a 7.62 by 39, which is an AK-47 round, anywhere on the vest. Unlike the flak vest that I wore in the Marine Corps, it couldn't stop any rifle round, it would just stop fragments, right? These particular vests can actually stop a round fired by an AK-47 anywhere on the vest. That's the good news. The bad news is they're $1,700 each. This technology is very, very expensive, okay? But we're already taking pistols to a rifle fight. And as much as I don't want to have this conversation on a university campus, if we don't have this conversation, who will? The problem is that this is actually happening so much that it's starting to fall out of the mainstream news cycle. There's been active shooters at universities that never even made it into the nightly news on the national level. So it's becoming almost numbing for this, okay? So because we only have one full-time security guy, and that's Sam. I'm a professor, I'm teaching classes. So is Dave Lanning, okay? He teaches mainly criminal justice, and I mainly teach emergency management and some criminal justice classes. So all of this we have to do within the confines of our budget. And the only real way to do that, because once Justin purchases these cameras, they're on duty 24/7 forever to the lifespan of the unit, okay? Day, night, holidays, doesn't matter, okay? And if we're looking for somebody that we suspect that broke in here and stole something, we upload their picture and we can see everywhere they went on campus in real time, and it's time-stamped on there, okay? This is very important. We had a minor motor vehicle accident yesterday that was captured on camera, and it proved that it was really nobody's fault. It was just a car that was pulling out of one of our parking lots versus a bicycle. And it definitively, nobody ended up with a ticket, okay, because this camera captured that, and we were able to definitively say this was just an accident. No big deal. You know, fortunately, nobody was hurt. Any questions so far? It's a lot of information. 6 minutes? 1 minute, okay. Anybody have any questions for me? Yes, sir.
So if the internet is down, you still have security able to
Yes, because that's not, it's cloud-based, but on our server. Yes, sir. And we've also EMP or electromagnetic pulse hardened both our server rooms.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will do a Q&A session after all of our speakers have completed their time. So, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Mr. Bernie Watson. Okay, coming from the hardest world that we could possibly be coming from into one of the kindest souls that I've ever met in my entire life, Dr. Steve Hoekstra, one of our longest tenured professors that's going to be speaking here today. Born and raised in Ames, Iowa, so are you a Cyclone guy or not so much? Yeah. Okay, and then apparently has went to Central College in Pella, home of the Tulip Festival, as I remember. Yep, went undergraduate there, came to Kansas to study social psychology and communications at Kansas State University in Manhattan. An eclectic researcher and instructor, he specializes in mass media effects, interpersonal relationships, and self-esteem. But he also conducted research on pseudoscientific beliefs, is that religiosity? See, this is why we pay him the big bucks, ladies and gentlemen. Academic behaviors, environmental attitudes, and a variety of other social psychology and personality variables. Most recently, the dark triad. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Steve Hoekstra.
So today I'm going to be talking about one of the other random things that I study. And so I'm talking today about motivation in general and academic motivation in particular. We did some studies pre-COVID that looked at motivation of our students and thinking about why do people stay in school, why do people strive for what they're trying to achieve. So one of the things we have to make aware is that it's important for people to be motivated. If you're not motivated, you'll have a very easy job, the kind robots will be doing soon. So what do we mean? By motivation, we're saying that there is a goal, and motivation provides an energy to try to achieve that goal. So we talk about motivation as having a level of contribution, intensity, and a direction, something that you're aiming toward. In general, what we're trying to aim toward is one of three different main psychological goals. One is the need for autonomy, that we want to be in control, we want to be in charge of our lives. Second is we want to seem like we know what we're doing. And the third is we want to make friends. So when we're talking about these primary needs, a lot of times our motivation is trying to address one or more of those things. So if we try to divide motivation up, the easiest way to do it is to look at the unmotivated, or in psychological terms, amotivated. For the sake of Kaden and my daughter, I put in my obligatory Star Wars meme. Versus a motivated person who wants to get it done. You got this. And from a teacher's perspective, we're trying to figure out, how do we motivate others? Is it something that we have to punish or reward? All my students that are here are getting attendance credit for showing up. But a whip to the office is not necessarily the best motivational tool. So, if we were to divide in the motivation stuff and try to dig a little deeper, unpack it, we have the amotivated off to the side, and we can describe the motivated people as either intrinsic or extrinsic. The extrinsic are the folks that like the gold stars. They do it for the grade, they want to get the reward or avoid the punishment. On the intrinsic side, they do it for the love of learning, right? They want to be curious, they're intrigued, they do the homework, or in the case of sports, going to the practice and doing the weights and stuff because it's what they love to do. Now, I'm unpacking this a little bit further. These diagrams are getting busier and busier. When we start looking in our lab about motivation, we start looking at different styles of motivation or aspects of intrinsic and extrinsic. I'm going to show a busier picture, but one that has a little easier language on it in a little bit. But we can divide extrinsic motivation into people that are pure extrinsic, and as we move our way to the left side of this, the right side of this diagram, we get more and more internalized or more intrinsic. So these four are people who are doing it for being caught up in it in their things that they love to do. They come because of the team, or they like doing it, they want excitement. They're starting to drink the Kool-Aid and buy into the philosophy and the values of the place, versus doing it because of just the joy of doing it. They would come to class even if there wasn't attendance points because they just think they're great. So here's my busy slide. Basically the same thing, but I'm doing a little, like I said, deeper dive. We have people on the left-hand side, the mustification, the people who have to do it because it's the or else motivation, the whip. On the right, we have the wantification, the people who want to do it. So we have, for example, the external pressure, grades, playing time, required study hall, gold stars, stickers. As we move our way to the little more internalized, we have popularity, or wanting to make mom or dad or teacher happy, or friends liking you, doing it for a job, doing it because it's practical, they're going to earn more money if they get a degree. Some buying into the values of the place, that recognition of the value of the liberal arts education, and then doing it because it's worth the work, it's worth the pain and energy because it's who I am and what I love to do. Now as we pulled Desi and Ryan's model into the sorts of things we've been doing in our lab, what we find is that there are some differences in philosophy. This is my bringing in Michelle, so can I have 3 of her minutes? The power of yet. The people who are on the right-hand side are in it because they want to learn. The people who are on the left are wanting to succeed. They're motivated by success rather than just knowledge in and of itself. Michelle is going to talk about power of yet. That's where this comes in, the growth mindset that is all the rage in elementary schools these days. The idea that is intelligence a fixed quantity or something that is developed. And so we have people who are fixed that say, it is what it is, I've got what I've got. Growth mindset says, I don't know it yet. And if I work hard, I will get to know it. So this translates then from a mindset and approach to what you need to do in order to learn. Okay, learning should be effortless. So I should not have to work too hard. I should be able to get decent grades. Versus learning requires effort and failure sometimes. Looking quickly at where our students fell on this scale. In general, our students tended to more heavily favor the extrinsic motivation. I've added a couple dimensions because we measured it a little bit differently. But because people could mark several, we have a reasonable number that are also there, at least having some intrinsic motivation. This translates then, the more toward the right you are, the better you are at bouncing back from failure. I need to finish. All my chimes are going off. So we perceive grades differently in terms of B's and C's, and in terms of retention and persistence. We're more likely to keep people in school if they want to be here. So we've got to do a lot of stuff. Thank you.
I do want to remind everybody that these professors typically are talking for about 50 minutes at a time, so the fact that they're able to teach an entire lesson in 7 minutes is quite an accomplishment in and of itself. So congratulations, you did maneuver it. Going from one of our longest tenured professors to one of our newest professors here on campus, Dr. Kelly Hopkins, the chair of the Department of Social Work here, one of our newest programs here at Kansas Wesleyan, and very excited to have her on board. Kelly Hopkins graduated from Kansas Wesleyan in 2015 with a degree in psychology and went on to get her master's from Newman University down in Wichita. With a master's in social work and an MBA, she's in the final stages of her doctorate of social work. She was formerly the director of Child Advocacy Center in Salina, a trauma therapist for first responders. She's also an assistant professor of social work, social work program director, and the department chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Kelly Hopkins.
So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about social work, our social work program here, and a unique aspect that I thought was important to bring to our social work program here at Kansas Wesleyan. So first I want to talk about, we have successfully gone through our accreditation program with the Council on Social Work Education. If you've been following along, we've spent the last 3 years working through this process. It was a lot of work, a lot of nights, weekends. It's self-study that we had to do talking about the program, and site visits and things like that. So what this means is that we are held accountable to the quality of education that we provide. It means that we put forward-facing the statistics of our graduation rates and how well our students are doing. And it just provides assurance that we have a quality program that we're offering. So what makes us unique? As social workers, we focus on both the person and their environment. We encompass a large lens of understanding the environment, cultures, communities, and how we impact them and they impact us. We do offer a minor in social work. It's actually just going through curriculum committee, so here soon that will be available. So if somebody wants to minor in social work, they will have that ability. We also are offering a minor in environmental justice. This is partnering with our Community Resilience Hub, and this is where we're going to look at sustainability when it comes to food, agriculture, people being able to take care of themselves and feed themselves. Some partnerships that we have going on, we will have one with Monte Azul in Puerto Rico. That will be part of our environmental justice minor. Well, students will get to learn in real time about food insecurity and disaster recovery, because Puerto Rico goes through that in real time. Climate change, they're always recovering from some disaster, one right after the other. And so students will get to be a part of that. We also have a partnership with a university in El Salvador. A lot of that will be done virtually right now. We hope that in the future, maybe our students can go over there, but we'll wait and see how that plays out. And then of course, eventually we will have several certificate programs that we can offer, and then eventually a master's program as well. And the nice thing about us having accreditation through the Council on Social Work, through the CSWE, is that our students only need 1 year to complete that master's program. So what I want to talk today about is what I felt was important to bring to this program was learning about vicarious trauma, what that is, how it affects our social workers, first responders, how to detect it, and then what to do about it. So I am working, my doctorate is in vicarious trauma, but also the growth that comes with that. So social workers, a lot of times we are just known for child welfare, but that's not all we do. There are social workers who are in the military, there are social workers who work for presidential administrations. Your 40-hour work week, child labor laws, and Social Security were all developed by a social worker. We even have social workers in NFL teams. In fact, the Denver Broncos employ a social worker to work with the players and their families. So we do all kinds of things. But because I'm a trauma therapist, I see first responders who deal with cumulative trauma. So day in and day out, and even as social workers, we are usually with people when they're at their worst moments. We're trying to help them through traumas. And so we take that on because of what we see, because of what we hear, the things that we have to witness. And over time, that actually causes damage to the brain. Research has shown there is physical damage to that brain. And that's why a lot of our first responders end up taking their life. That's why our social workers burn out so quickly, because it's difficult to see and hear these traumatic events. When I was at the Child Advocacy Center, one of the things I did was interview children who had disclosed some kind of abuse. And so having to hear those stories day in and day out is very difficult. So what I did is I brought a program, a class that's required. It's called Vicarious Trauma. And this is where I teach students what this means. What does it mean to have secondary trauma? What is happening to the brain? And what coping skills can we use to prevent suicides in our first responders? And social workers are first responders. So they learn to recognize it in themselves. They learn to recognize it in others, so then they can provide care to other people. And then we also talk about the difference between self-care over self-comfort. A lot of times people, you want to go get your nails done. That's not really self-care. That's more of a self-comfort. And so it's helping them understand actually how to process the traumatic events that they're dealing with and how to help other people as well. So moving on, I kind of thought I would actually speak for 7 minutes on that. It's my dissertation. How did I not go 7 minutes? You're doing great. So let's move on and have a little bit of fun, okay? So I want you to meet some interesting social workers. This is Senator Mikulski. She's the first Democratic woman to serve in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. Just to show you the different fields that we're in. Janet Rankin, she was the first woman elected to the U.S. Congress. This is Frances Perkins, again, your 40-hour work week, Social Security, and child labor laws. She worked in Roosevelt's presidential administration. And Martin Short, believe it or not, got a degree in social work, but went on to become an actor. Samuel L. Jackson, again, degree in social work. Am I at time?
Nope.
John Amos studied social work, went on to be a TV star. And then Jared Bernstein, he actually works in the Chief Economic Specialist, Economic Policy Institute. So see, you can work in policy or you can work directly with clients. And then this here is Ray Jackson. He is actually the social worker for the Denver Broncos. And I will call it good.
Okay, seeing as we are coming in after the lunch, I would like to ask everybody to we're gonna take a 30-second stretch break real quick, okay? So I don't know if you need to stand up, move around, do whatever you need to do. Yep, I'm seeing some tired bodies in here. And we've got 3 great speakers left, so I figured, we'll try to disperse, okay? Give yourself one of these if you need to. Very, very good. Good, that looks good. Outstanding. I'm not sure what that stretch was, but I'm here for it. That's good. Okay. Perfect. Yep, you got it. All right. Your 7 minutes is up, audience. Great job, everybody. You did it. All right. More women in STEM is exactly what the doctor ordered today, and I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Kristen Kramer. She is the department chair of the Math, Physics, and Computer Studies program here. She received a Bachelor in Arts from Southwestern College down in Winfield, Kansas. Lived there for kind of lived there for 2 years. We own a residence there, but anyways, we'll get into that at another time. Her doctorate is in Physics and Astronomy from the University of Nebraska. Started teaching at Kansas Wesleyan in the fall of 2013. Dr. Kramer is a faculty advisor for women in STEM and the dual degree liaison with Washington University Engineering Program. She is a member of the American Association of Physics Teachers, E-Alliance for Isolated Women in Physics and Astronomy. While at Kansas Wesleyan, she has developed a number of new courses, including Physics of Fun, a liberal studies course aimed at non-science students, and toolkits for teaching assistants, which helps students who are attending a graduate school prepare to be better teaching assistants. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kristen Kramer.
Thank you. Today I'm going to actually talk about something happening in our math program rather than something happening in the physics program. So this fall we have rolled out a new math major. We are going away from the traditional theoretical math major and we're going to an applied math major instead. This is where many of the jobs are. This is also what our students have been asking for a number of years. The first area we're going to talk about is data science. Okay. So look in the Harvard Review. They declared that data science was the sexiest job in the 21st century. So what is data science? So data science combines data. It combines expertise of a particular area. It combines knowledge of mathematics and computer programming, artificial intelligence, machine learning, to be able to answer questions. Okay? They look at not only the data, but what questions can you answer, what questions can you not answer from the data. Data scientists show up everywhere. They show up in business, they show up in sports, they show up in medicine, they show up just about everywhere you can possibly think of. So they take lots of data and they figure out how to extract things from it. Hopefully that gives you new insight into what is going on. So data scientists spend time doing things like looking at patterns and trends. They try to make forecasts and models. They try to figure out how to use machine learning and apply machine learning to very, very, very large data sets. And then they try to do analysis and come up with some kind of new innovation or ideas or insight using the data. Data science has a median salary of about $100,000 a year. It requires a bachelor's degree to start in the field, and it's projected to grow about 36% in the next about 10 years. So if you take data science at Kansas Wesleyan, you're going to take an assortment of courses, including some statistics classes, intro to data science kinds of classes, computer programming classes, machine learning, and just a variety of other kinds of things. The second new math concentration we're offering this fall is financial math. So financial math is the branch that uses math to analyze data related to solving problems in the financial market. It could be things like actuarial science, things like risk management kinds of careers, data mining, stock trading, marketing, investment strategies. So things that combine business and marketing and accounting in with math intense math things. So financial math, median salary again is over $100,000. Also usually requires a bachelor's degree. Both data science and financial math, you can go on to professional further degrees if you would like. And it's projected to grow about 29% in the next 10 years. Some sample classes would be things like scientific programming, financial accounting, mathematical statistics, micro and macroeconomics, business law, calculus. So it's taking those ideas and combining them together. Our third track is applied mathematics. So this is kind of more the broad one. In applied mathematics, deals with a lot of different problems out there. So they're tackling problems like, is ethanol a viable solution for the world's dependency on fuel? Can biofuel production be optimized to combat negative implications in the world's economy and environment? Those are kind of questions that an applied mathematician might tackle. Or a pharmaceutical company wants to search a very large database of proteins to find one that's similar shaped or has activity to one they discovered. What's the most efficient way to do that? Or how do diseases spread? How How do impacts on the environment? What happens then? Okay. So applied mathematics is a very broad area. Applied mathematics, usually you're going to be in a discipline, and disciplines kind of cover the whole range of things. Could be things related to climate, could be things related just to data and data mining, could be things related to science and ecology and epidemiology, could be things like quantum information systems, so quantum computing. There is a very, very, very broad set of topics that applied mathematicians cover. Mathematicians who are interested in applied math or statistical statisticians, salary is right around 100,000 also, just a little bit under. Usually for career positions for these, you're going to have a master's degree. So this is one that often you'll go to graduate school, but you're not required to go to graduate school. There are options out there for bachelor degree levels also. And it is also projected to have a very large growth in the next 10 years. This one also, you will take a variety of science classes and math classes, scientific programming, stats, modeling. But the difference between this one and the other three, or the other two, is that you have to have a focus area. And the idea of the focus area is that you delve into a related field in more depth. So at this point in time, our related fields right now are physics, chemistry, and biology. Our goal is in the next few years, after we get everything kind of all the rough spots smoothed out, to be able to broaden that to a wider cross-section of focus areas from across campus. But right now we're just limiting it to those three. And there's a lot of applications from those three areas with the various subfields that are related to the different disciplines in applied math.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Sorry, we didn't tell, some of these things we didn't tell them beforehand. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Kristen Kramer. And one of the things that I want to applaud her and a lot of our professors here at Kansas Wesleyan is what they are really, really good at. One is obviously teaching classes, but also identifying areas that we need to further explore, things that we need to identify for the success rate of our students after they leave this university. It's analyzing the current workforce and where the holes are, and the things that she's talking about right now are going to do just that for our Kansas Wesleyan students, which if you're an alum like me, you know how exciting that is to see that kind of success rate outside of the classroom. We're excited to see where that's going to take us in the future. Speaking of somebody who's very good at analyzing those sort of things, Professor Brian Minnick. Brian Minnick's career spans a continent from South Dakota to Florida to Kansas. He has coached football, men's and women's basketball, women's track and field, cross country, golf, and volleyball, and taught grade levels from kindergarten through college. And he'll probably tell you that there's not a whole lot of difference between those two things. He's worked as an experienced physiologist in cardiac and pulmonary rehab for hospitals in Florida and managed athletic and fitness clubs at Kansas Wesleyan for the past 16 years. He's been the department chair and associate professor of sports and exercise science. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Minnick.
All right, now I'm gonna share a little. I've been here 16 years, and I'm heading out at the end of this year. And so I was just kind of reflecting on where were we, where are we, and where might we go as a department. And so I was sharing that with my friend Hannah at the coffee. We have morning coffee whenever that is, once a month. And I was saying, here's what I want to do, da 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 da. And she, comes up, she says, Newton's first law of motion. I says, that's perfect. I mean, I didn't even think about it because it's exactly what I wanted. Because you know what the first law of motion is. An object at rest will remain at rest unless what? There's some kind of force put upon it. Now, this isn't a physics class, all right? We have a professor for that. Right? And then an object in motion is going to remain in motion until a force has stopped it. And so, hopefully this works. Oh, yes. So I want to take a look at the past, the present, and the future of the Sport and Exercise Science Department. And you can see that in 2004 to 2010, I had to put a program review together a couple of years after I got here. And in 2004 to 2010, those were the majors that we had in our department. Nothing, really anything about exercise science. All right. Now in 2010 and 2015, because as soon as I got here, I started working on it, and we need an exercise science major with some different emphasis or different tracks. And so we put something together, got it through the curriculum. You might have been on that curriculum committee, and you felt sorry for me, and so you passed it. So we did a couple things. We gave our department a new name. It used to be the Department of Health and Physical Education. Now we changed it to the Department of Sport and Exercise Science, trying to encapsulate the idea of sports management, that area, and then the exercise science, where it comes into personal training, physical therapy, occupational therapy, all those different areas. And then of course we didn't get rid of physical education, K through 12, the sports management and the athletic training. So we're still in the past. And then here's where we're at right now. Here's the present. Department of Sport and Exercise Science, 2015, 2023. Here are the majors. We took and we just did I did some revisions. Around 2013, 2014, I did some revisions. Took a look at everything. What do we need to add? What do we need to, we got some stuff going, but now we need to tweak it. And this is where we're at. We have exercise science, fitness and wellness, and still the personal training. Then we have the health sciences. So we added a major, split up the exercise science, and went to a health science, and that's where our pre-athletic training and pre-physical therapy emphasis are. And then, of course, we still have physical education and sports management. So those, when you take a look, or when you're thinking about our department, there it is. That's the curriculum now. Now I just want to talk a little bit about the growth of our department. This is just, just a real quick idea. You can see that the idea of exercise science, way back in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, it wasn't that popular. But about the time that we started it here, we were right in with what the national movement was. We could see that was going to happen. And so we see there nationally there's a major growth in the area of exercise science and health science. And I threw something up there with sports management just for fun. Now I want you to take a look at where we've gone with the number of students that have picked up this particular area, this department, being involved in this department and this majors. In 2009, when I did the program review, the average number of students in our department was 98. In 2017, when I did the program review, the average number jumped up to 134. The last 4 years, because we thought it might be a fluke, we jumped up to 181 students. I thought it might be a fluke. But the next year, and the next year, we were still in the 180s. And this year, we popped up to 221. So we're moving in the right direction. The ball is still moving. But is it going to continue to move? That's the question. What are our students doing? You might want to know. What from our department, what are your students, when they graduate here, what's happening? What are they doing? We have probably about 1 minute, good. We have a dozen at least, Doctor of PT since 2013, 14. OTs, we have a student that was rated was honored with being the best occupational therapist in the state of Arizona. She's now in the University of Hawaii teaching. Doctor of chiropractic, athletic trainers, personal trainers, working with professional teams, coaches, physical education. That right there, those are the things our students are doing from our department. So what does the future hold? Is the ball still rolling? Is it going to still roll? Or are we going to hit some force and it's going to stop? These are the challenges. These are the things that we want to do in the future. We're adding more faculty. We're going to revise the emphasis for personal training to strength and conditioning. We're going to set up your math degrees with sports management. That's what that is right up there. I didn't say that specifically, but when you were talking about that. We're going to be advocating master's degree in 5 years. We have emphasis continued in internships, and we're going to be looking for a state-of-the-art exercise science, health science lab. We do those types of things right there, the ball keeps moving.
That was good. All right, so after we talk with our last speaker today, I just want to couple quick reminders. One, if you are an alumni or a friend of the university that's visiting us this weekend, a quick reminder that at 5 o'clock over at the Kerwin House, you'll see that big tent just to the north of where the stadium and everything is. That tent will be hosting our alumni barbecue this evening, and then you can join us afterwards at the library for social there as well. So very exciting weekend for us. Dr. Minnick, or Professor Minnick is correct in saying that we do have physical therapists that are working even here in Salina. And when we're talking about the medical field here in Salina, one of my favorite things to do, and I don't like to go to the hospital very often, but when it does happen, a lot of Kansas Wesleyan alum working in our hospital here locally and around the world. And that is in large part now because of Professor Picklesimmer here with us today. With more than 20 years of nursing experience, Andrea Picklesimmer has expertise in medical surgery, mental health, and critical care nursing. She has a strong medical surgical background, and she loves teaching with a passion to facilitate learning for future nurses. For the past 15 years, she has dedicated herself to nursing education and teaches adult health, assessment, critical care, and mental health. Dr. Picklesimmer is a certified CPR instructor and Stop the Bleed trainer and sponsor of the Student Nurse Organization. She is the advisor for nursing transfer students. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrea Picklesimmer.
Thank you. And like she said before, most people do 50-minute lectures. Usually for nursing, our classes are 2-hour lectures. So we're trying to keep it short, you know. So the next generation NCLEX. For those of you who may not know what the NCLEX is, it's the National Council Licensure Examination for nurses. So nursing graduates have to take this adaptive test and successfully pass it to become a registered nurse. In April of 2023, the National Council State Board of Nursing implemented the Next Generation NCLEX exam. So what is the Next Generation NCLEX exam? The Next Generation NCLEX exam was launched on April 1st of 2023 to better measure nursing candidates' clinical judgment and decision-making abilities through the use of innovative item types. The need to measure this stemmed from information that was gathered during their 2013-2014 National Council State Board of Nursing Strategic Practice Analysis, which showed newly licensed nurses are increasingly expected to make complex decisions while caring for patients. The change to the Next Generation NCLEX came about when research findings by Kavanaugh and colleagues in 2017 triggered an alert to the National Council State Board of Nursing that determined these findings, that 50% of novice nurses were involved in nursing errors, 65% of errors attributed to poor clinical decision-making, and only 20% of employers were satisfied with clinical decision-making of novice nurses. Based on these findings, the National Council of State Board of Nursing decided something needed to be done to improve patient and public safety. This leads us to the discussion of the clinical judgment model. In nursing, we're seeing an increase in client acuity, also an increase in client age, and many changes in healthcare, which means that there's an increased demand for nurses to have good clinical judgment. So clinical judgment involves critical thinking and decision making, which is why the National Council of State Board of Nursing came up with the clinical judgment model, which is the basis for our new next generation NCLEX exam. So this is what the new clinical judgment model looks like. It's a necessary skill, like I said, for novice nurses to have. Client care, nurse errors can be improved by enhancing clinical judgment of our novice nurses, and one way that we can do this is by teaching and using this clinical judgment model. So this model identifies functions in the cognitive process that a nurse employs during their decision making. And so this is, like I said, an example of what this looks like. So this is something that we go through with our students and what students or novice nurses are going to be using on the floor. So the first step is recognizing who's. So they have to think, what matters most here? So what they're going to do is they're going to identify relevant and important information from different sources, whether that's a patient's medical history, vital signs, the assessment they do on their patient. Then they have to analyze clues. So they're thinking, what does this mean to me? This is where they're going to organize and link those recognized cues to the client's presentation and establish what their concerns are as far as their patient is concerned, or what their patient problem is. Then they're going to prioritize a hypothesis. So this is where they think, where do I start? Okay? And so this is where the novice nurse asks, which explanations are most likely based on my findings? And they're going to prioritize that in regards to urgency for their patient. Then the next step is generating solutions. What can I do? Okay? So this is where the novice nurse identifies expected outcomes, or what are my goals for this patient? And then they come up with potential interventions for that patient. The next step is taking action. So what will I do? Okay? And so this is where they're actually going to put those interventions into play. They're going to actually do those and implement those for their patient. And then the last step is evaluating outcomes. Did it help? Did what I do help? All those interventions that I did for my patient, did they help them? Why or why not? Okay, so that's the clinical judgment model. The clinical judgment model is used on the next generation NCLEX, and it assesses if the student makes an appropriate clinical judgment decision within a case scenario. So the next generation NCLEX questions will be laid out in a case scenario as illustrated on the slide, like you can see, and they will have access to an electronic health record just like they would in a clinical setting. The student will have the ability to look at the patient's history, they'll have the ability to look at their vital signs, look at their patient's lab results, and that will be presented in a case scenario in a chart. The next few slides are going to give you an idea of what a case study with questions looks like on the next generation NCLEX exam. So again, this is what the chart will look like. They can click on each area on the chart, so they can click on the patient's history, they can click on the nurse's notes, they can click on vital signs to determine what the patient's vital signs are, and then they can also click on lab results and see what the patient's lab results are, and then interpret those. And so from the information that they gathered from that chart that you just saw, they're going to have questions that are asked of them. So on the next slide, you're also going to be able to see kind of the different item types and the questions that they will be asking them on this next generation NCLEX exam. So for instance, on this question, the student has to review the client's health history and medical record, and then drag each potential issue the client is at risk for to the box on the right, so as you can see in this question. The next item type is called a clause question. And so here the student has to determine what the nurse should do first, and then what the nurse should do second. The next is called a matrix question, and here the student has orders from a doctor and they have to determine if it's anticipated, is it non-essential, or is it contraindicated. The next one is extended multiple response, and this question is asking what actions does the nurse have to take, okay? And then the last one is called an enhanced hotspot, and this question is asking the student to highlight the findings that would indicate the client is progressing as expected. So the patient chart, the case scenarios with questions that you just saw on these slides are similar to what our nursing students are going to be seeing on their next generation NCLEX. So how is KWU Nursing preparing our students for the NCLEX exam? By implementing clinical judgment activities into the classroom, by using unfolding case studies in class. We also are having students apply the clinical judgment model in our simulations, and by implementing these next generation questions on our own exams. Implementation of the next generation NCLEX into our classes started 2 years ago. The next generation NCLEX was rolled out in April of 2023, and our May 2023 graduates were the first to take the NCLEX, or the next generation NCLEX exam, and I'm happy to say that our first time pass rate for May of 2023 was 100%.
I appreciate that. We did love some happy news. All right, as promised, we now have 10 minutes of Q&A time. So if you've been writing down your questions, if you've been saving them up, please raise your hand and I will make sure that we call on you. Yes, ma'am, if you don't mind introducing yourself and ask her question. Yeah, you.
Okay, my name is Diane Davis. I graduated in '73 from Kansas Wesleyan, and I majored in elementary education. And my question is for Dr. Kramer. Elementary education has come a long way, and STEM is very important in that now. Is that part of the education program here at Wesleyan?
We are going through transitions on the education program right now. So we have closed most of the STEM ones in the last couple of years. We are looking at figuring out alternative ways we can bring them back. The state wants us to have large numbers of graduates, which are just not viable for schools this size. For example, they wanted us at 5 a year in physics. That gets you national awards at 5 a year in physics. So we are looking at alternative strategies. It's definitely on our radar, something we definitely believe is very, 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 very important. We are just gonna have to figure out some other ways of doing it. At the moment, students, there are some alternative routes into teaching students can do, so they can get a degree in one of the STEM areas, and then they can go essentially get a, what do they call it? Master's of Practice in Education, and get certified to be education instructors that way. So that's the way that most of our students at the moment are going through it.
Actually, I'll steal one real quick. Dr. Hoekstra, you talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation in your students. When you're having those sort of conversations with your colleagues, how does that influence what we're doing here in the Kansas Wesleyan classrooms?
Well, we have to struggle, I think, to come up with what are the ways to build our classes, to try to help students not only meet them in the motivation that they have, but move them in the direction of intrinsic as much as possible as they progress through the curriculum, so that by the time they're seniors, hopefully they are more intrinsically motivated than they are when they come in.
Right. Teaching people how to find intrinsic motivation can sometimes be motivating in and of itself. That's a tough deal, but I appreciate what you guys are doing there. Yes, Mr. Coleman.
Yes, sir.
It's how many people on campus carry weapons? You have a weapon right now, and if an active shooter came in the east door and we knew about it, somebody came in this room and said active shooter heading this way, what would you do and what would you tell us to do?
Okay, I currently, right this second, I have 3 armed people. I'm armed, Dave Lanning's armed, and our Chief of Security, Sam, is armed. We have an app called Safe Zone, that Blue Force Tracker app I showed you. Every student and every faculty and every staff member, it's free. We paid for it, but it's free to the end user. They can press a help button like they're locked out of their room, a red button, emergency button, and then they will show up on our Blue Force Tracker, and then we'll know what's going on. Our main thing with all, when I was with the sheriff's office, they sent me to GTI, or Government Training Institute, for active shooter. And it used to be where you'd want to stack about 3 or 4 cops up on a door before you made entrance. But that's the old way of doing things. Now we're going to go towards the threat, and the first security officer that gets there will go in alone and engage the threat. So I hope I answered your question.
So what would we do if it's heading this way and you knew about it right now?
Run, hide, fight.
Okay.
Okay. So if they're coming from this way, we're going to go out that door and create time, distance, and shielding from them, cover and concealment, okay? Run, hide if we can, and then fight. Worst case scenario, use a fire extinguisher or a tool, whatever you have, to fight back. But my team is going to engage the threat immediately. I figure we need to stay alive for 8 minutes because right now there's about 8 to 1 police officers on the street. Okay, depending upon where they're at. By the time the call goes out to dispatch processes the call, puts it out on the radio, and they get here is about 8 minutes-ish, unless they're pulled off sides down south or something like that. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I'm gonna direct another question. All right, social work, because this is one of Kansas Wesleyan's biggest legacies here is food insecurity and tackling that. So how do you combine the tradition of Kansas Wesleyan's work with food insecurity and social work?
Great question, thank you. So as you know, we've started the Community Resilience Hub, and that's actually what that particular area is looking at. The reason that we have brought this into social work is because this is what we do, is help people, right? People need to eat in order to survive. And our job is to empower people to take care of themselves. And so the reason we married the two is because we can go out and educate, we can go out and help them find resources. A lot of people don't know that your farm bill actually houses our SNAP benefits, and that's what as social workers we help find those resources, those SNAP resources. So we have to understand how the farm bill works. Also, people don't know that with your SNAP benefits you can actually buy seeds. And so as social workers, we can go out and help people understand that they can use their benefits to buy seeds, and here's how you can plant them and feed yourself. So that was one of the reasons. And then we live in an environment, right? Our environment affects us. We have an effect on the environment. And so living in that environment, we have to teach people about climate change and what can you do differently and how can you help the environment. So very good.
Oh, yes, sir, right there.
I have a follow-up question for you, Kelly. Is you mentioned about the difference between comfort care and self-care.
Oh, yeah.
And your example was about the comfort care. So can you tell us a little more about self-care instead of the comfort care?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll use myself as an example because I am a trauma therapist. When there's a critical incident here in Salina, whether it's the Salina Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, Fire Department, they call me in for what's called a critical incident stress debrief. And so in this debrief, I help walk the first responders through the incident and what occurred so that they can start to process those traumatic events. In that work, I also take on that vicarious trauma because I have to hear what they witnessed and what they had to do. So for self-care, for me to actually process that, I need to also go get my own therapeutic help. And so when we talk about self-care, it's either therapeutic help, it's either out being in nature, it's being with family, being with loved ones, being with friends, feeling that security, rather than me saying, well, I'm gonna go get a pedicure and that will make everything all better, because that doesn't actually fix what's happened up here, because we know the brain is actually having physical damage. And so that connection with love and family and what you actually enjoy doing that gets you in your soul, that's your self-care. Does that help?
Thank you.
I know that, sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to pass you over earlier.
Do I have to introduce myself?
Please.
My name's Shannon Holmes. I'm a Cicada student here. I was gonna pick on you, but I can pick on Dr. Pickles. I'm the same. It doesn't necessarily denote to what you were talking about with your profession. What's something in your profession that is like very obvious, but the public doesn't really notice or know about? Like it's very obvious to you and people in the profession, but the public doesn't really know.
Something that's very obvious in my profession. The public doesn't know about. Trying to think. That's a tough question. I would say, something that maybe is not obvious to the public is sometimes, and I would say as more as an RN, maybe not as a nurse educator, but would be the abuse that nurses suffer in the clinical setting, okay? And whether that means from patients, from family these things that can occur where they're actually being hit, kicked, punched, and many people don't realize that those types of things go on, and that nurses actually have to deal with those types of things. And again, kind of goes back to that trauma, that vicarious trauma that she's talking about. And so a lot of people don't really actually know that about, some of the things that actually nurses have to deal with.
And just on a side note, we've actually implemented the vicarious trauma program that I developed. We're actually working with the nurses as well to help them, and education. Yeah.
And things that we can't do, we can't restrain them, we can't do things, to prevent that from happening. So that's something I think that a lot of people know.
Congrats on your national accreditation.
Yeah,
by the way.
thank
It's very
you.
exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you guys all have busy schedules, as well as our professors here at Kansas Wesley, so we will get you on your way, but please, ladies and gentlemen, give these guys a round of applause. I am sure several of them will hang out if you have more questions for them, but please enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, go Yotes.